more complex because you don't just have one factor. You said the other one just has competitiveness. This has more than one. So the fact that when something's so complex, people's eyes glaze over, they tend to vote no more often. Isn't that going to be a big, even if you get through the legislature, isn't it going to be tough to explain this to voters and have them feel comfortable?
Well, like Representative Letson went back to the casino bill, I'll go back to that one. If you want to see a very complex bill, you're going to bother to read the whole thing. 4 land descriptions is certainly a very complex bill, and the voters seem to get by that. I think we can look at the 4 criteria that we're using, the 4 criteria that we use in the competition, and say there are formulas that go toward making these things happen and assuring that they happen, rather than just kind of saying, oh yeah, the plans should be competitive and compact. As a general statement, we can say that we now have some way of enforcing those good government principles. And if somebody wants to understand the formula, we can help them. But we've been talking to a lot of people about this. We've been talking to local leagues about this who are fairly representative of the population. And they've not had a lot of trouble stumbling through those formulas, but rather understand that these are ways of making sure those good government principles actually happen.
I'd like to add one point to that. As you know, I was active in the Ron campaign, and one problem was that the text that was being proposed was really incredibly convoluted and excessively long. The criteria that we have added, we added because we concluded that one criterion was not enough. That representational fairness, for example, the preservation of communities, for example, had to be part of the designing of adequate districts. So we concluded early on that going with one criterion was simply not going to do it, that we needed to simultaneously address all of these other core principles of democratic representation. At the same time, I should point out that so-called, quote, formulas for determining some of these are preposterously simple. Representational fairness is the difference between the percentage of the votes cast for the candidates of one party statewide minus the percentage of the seats given to that particular party. You can calculate this on the back of an envelope with a pencil. It's not a very complicated criterion at all. Some of the others are a little bit more complicated. The compactness measure, for example, requires computer software that has been developed for this purpose. But we see no alternative but to reflect the complexity of good governance by adding a couple of criteria to what we originally had proposed in 2005, while at the same time, we hope, keeping it simple enough that most people can understand why we're doing it.
Representative Letson, last week, Chris Redfern, the Democratic Party chairman, was not very hopeful about any kind of a plan. He said, I believe he said, you'll affect about 6 votes one way or the other on this issue. He said it's an issue people don't understand, nor do they care to understand. So he was questioning it from a political standpoint as to the value. And then he was also saying, in one of your criteria here, compactness, he was saying that in order for this really to be successful, particularly for Democrats who have a lot of voters compacted around urban areas, you have to take compactness out. You have to let the lines go beyond townships, beyond county lines. You can't limit them to those boundaries. What is your response to what he was saying?
My response to that would be that I believe if you would talk to the good Chairman Redfern at this point, he would be endorsing this particular plan. And those are statements of fact that Democrats tend to live in more urban areas and Republicans tend to live in more rural areas. Those are facts of life. But I believe that the way these 4 criteria are measured and are weighted, that you will be able to draw 99 very competitive districts. Now, there are districts that you are never going to be able to make competitive in the 50-50 sense. Representative Goodwin. Representative Goodwin in Northwest Ohio, the only way to reach Democrats is go to Gary, Indiana. I mean, gotta go forever to find some Democrats out there. You know, Bob Hagan in Bob's district, you know, you'd have to go over into Pennsylvania to find some Republicans that would be able to balance out there. So some districts are going to be non-50-50 districts. But those two districts that I've just mentioned would be part of that mirror image that you are trying to create when you do representational fairness. So the overall steps that you go through in order to formulate this plan take into account those things like Bob's districts on the east and Bruce's district on the west, and puts a balance in there so that the plan that would be adopted would be the one that sets that mirror image up exactly, and then we would go back to the next one's competitiveness, the preservation of subdivisions, and the compactness. So once you say you get 10,000 plans, as they come down and you grade them in those four levels, you're going to get down to very few plans, and those plans are going to look very, very similar, and they are going to be fair for Ohio's voters.
I just want to be clear, the advocates here said you're willing to go with both plans, the Houston and this one. And Representative Letson, I didn't quite understand. Did you say you yourself also would go with the combination of both in the end?
I did not say that, but I'm sure that it's on tape in various places in this room. I said I would not rule out various parts of these plans coming together, but I would not endorse that. I think that's pretty plain.
Okay, and the reason you would not endorse that?
Is because this one really concentrates on how the districts are drawn. And Senator Houston's plan really concentrates on who draws the districts. So this one is the one that is most mathematic. This one is the one that is most open. This one is the one that is fairest in the state of Ohio by having it done through a formula as opposed to having it done through bargaining.
But here it looks like, I mean, for a second, it looks as if, hey, maybe there could be this huge breakthrough we've never had before. But then, when it comes down to it, we get the Democrats or the Republicans say, no, we won't go along with half of the other.
I think you may find that Senator Houston would be endorsing this plan. I think that's a question you will probably put to him at some point today or tomorrow. And I think after he has a chance to read this plan over, he's probably going to think it's a very good plan. I think his is a very good start. I think this one just picks it up and takes it all the way through.
If I could just